It started with a coffee cup. Nothing unusual, just the logo of a brand I'd seen 1,000 times. Sharp lines, perfect symmetry, some kind of abstract flame or feather. But this time something felt wrong. Not because it looked strange, but because it looked too familiar. Later that night, I was going through an old book I'd picked up at a flea market years ago. Compendium of early occult seals. Mostly drawings, dusty paper. I bought it for the cover, and there it was. Page 63. An almost identical symbol to the one on my cup. Same structure, same angles, labeled only. Sigil for submission by design, 1486. I laughed at first. Coincidence, right? But the shape was too exact. So I searched the logo online. The company, founded in 2009. No public designer listed. No origin story for the symbol. Just some vague words like energy, connection, growth. But the old seal? It had a very different meaning. That night, I didn't sleep. I pulled logos from the top 100 brands. Apple, Amazon, Chase, Procter & Gamble, Shell, government agencies, universities, international banks, and I compared them to books, grimoires, esoteric alphabets, Masonic charts. Not every match was perfect, but enough of them were close. Too close. One shape, a spiral nested inside a triangle, appeared in at least 4 corporate logos. In the book, it was labeled Insignia of Initiated Memory, to remind those who forgot they were chosen. Chosen for what? That's where this all begins to unravel. Most people think logos are modern inventions. Clean, minimal, just a way to sell things faster. But what if that's only half the story? The deeper I dug, the stranger it got. Every design guide I found talked about geometry, color psychology, consumer targeting, but none of them could explain why so many logos resembled ritual glyphs, or why symbols used in 15th century grimoires now appeared on pharmaceutical packaging, or why banks chose serpent curves and all-seeing eyes when their founders claimed to believe in transparency. So I made 2 folders, one labeled Modern Logos, the other Historical Sigils, and I ran them through a visual recognition tool. The overlaps: 37% shared identical internal geometry. One major tech brand's logo, almost a perfect match for a protective seal used by Renaissance-era cryptographers. Another, a fashion house, used a mirror pattern found in medieval alchemical drawings, meant to represent ego binding. They didn't just look similar. They functioned similarly, to draw attention, to encode memory, to signal something invisible to those trained to see it. See, sigils aren't just magic doodles. They were built to represent intention, embed meaning, focus will. And in ancient systems, the more people who looked at them, the more powerful they became. Sound familiar? Corporate logos are seen billions of times per day. On screens, billboards, packaging, clothing. Repeated, remembered, reinforced. But instead of focusing the will of a magician, they focus the behavior of the masses. So here's the real question. Are logos inspired by sigils, or are they sigils repurposed? I made a chart. Across the top, common logo shapes: circles, pyramids, serpents, eyes, infinity loops. Along the side, civilizations: Sumer, Egypt, Greece, Babylon, India, medieval Europe. And I started mapping origins. The spiral, found on cave walls in Ireland 5,000 years ago, used in rituals to represent rebirth and energy flow. The triangle, a core element in Egyptian and Greek sacred geometry, linked to the trinity of mind, body, and spirit, also used in talismans for manifestation. The circle with the dot in the center? In ancient astrology, it represented the sun, source of power, vision, leadership. Today, it's in dozens of tech and finance logos. Even the all-seeing eye, long before it was placed on dollar bills, was carved into temple ceilings in Mesopotamia and Thebes. Always watching, always above. It wasn't decoration, it was instruction. Someone is watching. Behave accordingly. These weren't random choices. Ancient cultures believed symbols could protect, summon, seal, influence. The symbols were not about communication. They were about activation. And the more a symbol appeared, the more real its power became. Fast forward to today. We still see them in tech logos, military patches, pharmaceutical emblems, government seals. Always the same forms, just sleeker, sharper, branded, but the archetype remains. So either designers keep accidentally recreating ancient power glyphs, or someone never stopped using them and just reintroduced them as marketing. I used to think logos just needed to look good. Balance, contrast, simplicity. That's what design schools teach. But the more logos I analyzed, the more I noticed something else. They were built on geometry, not style. Take a common tech logo. Zoom in. You'll often find a perfect golden ratio spiral, a 33-degree angle of alignment, a grid built from Vesica piscis, the sacred shape from ancient temples. No designer adds that by accident. The golden ratio, 1.618, appears everywhere. In ancient Greek architecture, in Da Vinci's sketches, in human facial proportions. It's pleasing, but also programmatic. When our brains see it, they respond with trust, familiarity, submission. You don't know why. You just feel it. Then there's the Fibonacci sequence, embedded in shells, flowers, hurricanes, also embedded in multiple financial institution logos. Why? Because it suggests order, growth, natural inevitability, even if the company itself is anything but natural. Another pattern, the rule of thirds, used in photography, art, and military insignias. The way the Pentagon's emblem is arranged, not random. It aligns with a hexagonal symmetry tied to planetary charts used in ancient Babylon. One leaked internal slide from a global brand agency read, "Designs must resonate on levels beneath conscious recognition." Not convince, not explain, resonate, because geometry isn't just pretty. It bypasses logic. You don't need to understand a shape for it to affect you. Ancients believed geometry was a mirror of divine order. Modern branding believes it's a shortcut to trust. Same method, different gods. Some logos are just images. Others feel like keys, not for doors, for minds. There's a theory among esoteric circles. A symbol is not powerful until it is recognized by the right eyes. In other words, meaning isn't universal. It's targeted, and some logos are designed to awaken, not inform. I came across a private design brief from 2006. It wasn't for a product. It was for a global unity initiative. The symbol, a circle split by a vertical line. Simple, clean, timeless. But in esoteric texts from the 1800s, that same shape represented initiation into polarity, division of inner and outer self, a seal used in Masonic second veil rituals. The document's directive was strange. The design should mean nothing to the public, but to those who know, it should say, "You are not alone." What kind of logo needs to say that? Across various institutions, finance, NGOs, defense groups, I noticed a similar trend. Logos designed with hidden layers of meaning, visible only when compared to ancient templates. Some only make sense when rotated 33 degrees. Others reveal shapes when you mirror the negative space. And when they do, they match heraldic symbols of old families, secret orders, lost societies. Is it deliberate? Or did some graphic designer just channel the occult? Either answer is disturbing, because it means either someone is placing coded emblems into public space, or these symbols are so embedded in our collective subconscious, they keep coming back on their own. Here's the real twist. Recognition itself is a ritual. To recognize is to participate. To see is to say, "I know what this is, and I know that you know too." That shared recognition, it creates a network, unspoken, untraceable, but very real. So next time you feel like a logo is watching you back, maybe it is. Maybe it's not just a brand. Maybe it's a password, and you were never supposed to remember it. I once thought logos were fresh, modern, minimal, a product of the 20th century. But then I compared them side by side with coats of arms from 400 years ago, and I realized some of these symbols never died. They just rebranded. Take the chevron logo. Simple, angular, repeated upward V-shape. In medieval heraldry, the chevron represented protection, military leadership, a loyalty to royal bloodlines. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a status marker. Now, it's an oil company. The Nestle logo, a bird feeding its young, was almost directly copied from the Nestle family coat of arms, dating back to 1600 Switzerland. Not just homage, legacy. The lion, the eagle, the serpent, they're everywhere. On corporate emblems, on university shields, on government badges, and every one of them traces back to noble houses, empires, secret brotherhoods. Then there's the Rothschild coat of arms. 5 arrows bound together, a lion standing guard, a motto, Concordia, Integritas, Industria, harmony, integrity, industry. Compare that to the branding of several global financial firms. Some use bundled arrows, some use heraldic beasts, some use the same Latin phrasing, fragmented but present. The logos changed, the bloodlines didn't. It gets stranger. Some modern design firms specialize in heritage visual strategy. Their pitch: we extract the symbology of your legacy and translate it into contemporary form. Translated: we turn your family's history of power into a logo. I found internal notes from a branding agency in London. One directive stood out: the design must reflect quiet authority. Symbols should hint at lineage, but never disclose it. This isn't marketing. It's camouflage, because in the past, power needed banners. Today, it needs logos, but the function is the same. Signal who you are. Signal who you serve. Signal who you belong to. So next time you see a clean, modern symbol on a box, screen, or building, ask yourself, is it just design? Or is it a flag from a war we forgot was still being fought? Most people assume, that's just a seal. That's just a badge. That's just tradition. But what if government symbols are not random tradition, but carefully preserved language? One built on authority, ritual, hidden allegiance. Let's start with something simple. The Great Seal of the United States. On the back of the dollar bill, an eye. Inside a pyramid. Above the Latin, Annuit Coeptis. Below, Novus Ordo Seclorum, New Order of the Ages. Why a pyramid? Why an Egyptian structure for an American symbol? And why the all-seeing eye? An image rooted in occult and Masonic lore? Or take the Pentagon's emblem. 5 sides, 5 stars. A layout that mimics a sacred geometry pentagram, used in ceremonial magic for centuries. Or the FBI seal, which features 13 stars in a circle. A number used across flags, currency, and military medals. Not for aesthetics, for continuity. Look globally. The Russian double-headed eagle, an imperial alchemical symbol. The British lion and unicorn, representing force and myth. The United Nations map, surrounded by olive branches in the style of ancient Roman peace emblems. These aren't nice designs. They are codes, meant to carry archetypal weight. Military insignias, full of wings, lightning bolts, swords and triangles, skulls with laurel wreaths, and always the number 33 somewhere in the patchwork, sometimes subtle, sometimes hidden in the folds. Why? Because symbols precede language, and they communicate faster than logic. When a child salutes a flag, they don't know what it means, but they feel what it tells them. Obey, unite, belong. A former NATO designer once said in a leaked forum, symbolism is how states transfer emotion without words. Fear, pride, loyalty, embedded in color and form. Not debated, not questioned, just felt. So next time you see a seal above a courtroom, or a badge on a uniform, or a crest behind a podium, ask, who designed this? And who taught them what it was supposed to mean? I used to think designers were just artists. Fonts, colors, layouts, people who made things look good. But then I found something strange. A branding agency's internal handbook, leaked in a legal dispute. It wasn't about marketing. It was about intentional symbolism. One chapter read, "Use sacred ratios where possible. Fibonacci for harmony. Triangular geometry for power. Circles for containment." Another said, "Avoid full symmetry. It creates subconscious discomfort. Use near symmetry to invite fascination." Who teaches this? Not in design school. I started looking into elite brand studios, the ones behind government emblems, central bank identities, global NGO marks. Names no one knows, but their portfolios? NATO's 70th anniversary symbol, World Economic Forum's rebrand, high-level military command emblems, COVID-era global initiative logos. Always sleek, always clean, but always familiar. One designer was quoted saying, "We're not just designing, we're encoding values." And some were more blunt. Every visual carries vibration. Not metaphorically. They meant it literally. Then I found the thread that pulled it all open. A now-deleted blog from a designer who left one of these studios. She wrote, "Sometimes the clients tell you what shape they want. Sometimes they send you the shape and say, just make it acceptable. Make it modern. Make it appealing. But don't change the core." One shape she received, a sigil traced directly from the Grimoire Verum, an occult text from the 18th century. Her task? Integrated into an agricultural sustainability campaign. This isn't just about logos. It's about language without words. Designers, the elite ones, they're not choosing shapes because they look nice. They're continuing a tradition, whether they know it fully or not. So now, when I see a new symbol on a UN program, or a medical initiative, or a currency proposal, I don't just ask, who approved this? I ask, who designed it, and what were they told? I used to think influence came through words, slogans, messages, ideas. But then I came across a term, psychoactive design, not in a conspiracy forum, but in a neuroscience and marketing journal. And suddenly, everything started to make sense. The human brain doesn't just respond to what something means. It responds to how it's shaped, how it moves, and even how it feels. Before we're aware of it, logos today don't just use design. They use frequency. Shapes like spirals and triangles trigger micro-movements in your eyes. They hold your attention without you realizing it. Colors like blue and red aren't chosen at random. They correspond to emotional responses hardwired into your nervous system. Blue equals trust, depth, submission. Red equals urgency, power, arousal. White equals clarity, surrender. Combine them in the right proportions. You're not looking at a logo. You're experiencing a signal. Motion adds another layer. Animated logos often use ripples, pulses, rotations, fades. Why? Because they mimic natural brainwave patterns. One leaked branding guide from a global finance firm literally said, "Animate the identity to match theta band oscillation. It should feel calming, but inevitable." Theta band, that's the frequency range in your brain associated with hypnosis and subconscious programming. So it's not just motion, it's entrainment. There's even more. Government-funded psychological operations have studied this for decades. One declassified military report from 2001 recommended, embed spiral and circular structures with low-contrast integration. Message retention increases when the viewer cannot rationally decode the image. Translation? If they can't explain it, they won't resist it. And it works, because your subconscious sees everything first. Your brain reacts before your mind even interprets. This is how modern logos work now. Not just as visual identity, but as frequency-loaded mechanisms, delivered through glowing glass screens. Backlit, moving, repeating. They don't need you to believe in them. They just need you to keep looking. By now, you've probably looked at your screen differently. Maybe even glanced at a few logos in the corner of your browser, and something clicked. That is the beginning. You weren't meant to notice. Branding was supposed to stay on the surface, a background hum in a world of noise. But when you start to read the symbols, patterns emerge. Too consistent, too old, too intentional. Circles, triangles, arrows, wings, serpents, eyes. They're not just design elements. They're glyphs, carried from temples to governments, from altars to operating systems. They encode ownership, hierarchy, invitation, obedience, not always in ways you can explain, but in ways your nervous system responds to. Here's the uncomfortable truth. We're surrounded by modern sigils, but unlike the ancients, we never learned to defend against them. They bypass logic. They bypass belief. They go straight to the operating system. Your city is covered in them. Your phone glows with them. Your child's toys are stamped with them. We didn't brand the world. We branded ourselves. And for those who know what they're looking at, it's a map. It's a language. It's a quiet network of coded control. Some call it design. Some call it art. But the ones who built it, they call it necessary. So the next time you see a logo, pause. Not to fear it, but to see it. Ask yourself, who placed this here? What is it mirroring? What is it trying to say? Without saying a word, because once you learn to read the system, you can't unsee it. And that's how the spell starts to break. We don't live under a single symbol. We live in a network of invisible influence, dressed up as simplicity, functionality, and trust. But the truth? It was never meant to be understood, just obeyed. Now it's your turn. Have you seen a logo that felt older than it should be? Something familiar you can't place? Leave it in the comments. Let's build the hidden archive together.